We have some breaking news from the NHL tonight. The NHLPA has finally released its full investigation report on the NHLPA's handling of the whole Kyle Beach scenario with the Chicago Blackhawks. We'll discuss the report and how more people failed Kyle Beach and the other victim coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we finally have the report from the NHLPA. It was finally released a few hours ago on the whole investigation that was completed on how they've handled the Kyle Beach and the other victims of the Blackhawk abuse scandal. Of course, that's been news now for quite some time. The Blackhawks conducted their own investigation. We saw many people be fired and lose their jobs over the outcomes and the results. And now the NHLPA, of course, had agreed to do their own investigation on their side of things on how everything was handled on their end. This was completed by Toronto law firm Cousin and O'Connor, and we finally have the report. It's been discussed here in the last couple of days that they're going to be releasing it sometime Thursday or Friday. Apparently there's some sort of power outage or something that caused it to be delayed, and we get the news dump late on a Friday going into the weekend, which I guess really shouldn't surprise many of us. That's been a lot of, type of news stories that don't really want to get a lot of attention kind of get dumped so people don't ignore it. It's Friday night, you're going into the weekend, you're busy, you may not see the news, and it kind of falls by the wayside and doesn't get as many eyes on it sometimes as, they would, that you would hope, I guess. But essentially, this investigation, in my opinion, is something that the players, upon reviewing, shouldn't be willing to just accept. There needs to be consequences on how this was handled. In my opinion, when the Blackhawks conducted their investigation, you saw an immediate impact and then a gradual continued impact shortly thereafter. You saw Stan Bowman, be escorted out of Chicago essentially pretty much right away. With lots of other people lost jobs in a short time thereafter. It now looks like, based on this report, unfortunately, it looks like there really isn't expected to be anything immediate here, but the players can demand change here, and they do have a voice on who runs their PA and everything. So here's the kind of the key details. A couple things to keep in mind. Kyle Beach and the other victim, who's referred to as Black Ace 1 since he's never publicly revealed himself, were not interviewed by this investigation. They were offered the opportunity to, but declined. So they did not participate. They probably figured they've been through enough and have talked about this enough, and everything, and they were not doing this one. And apparently, this investigation reviewed 20,000 plus emails and phone records, and there was 11 witnesses. So certainly, the outcome here, in my opinion, is just kind of mind-blowing that it wasn't more condemning of what was handled here. In my opinion, this was just really not a great outcome. To kind of summarize the kind of the report here, I guess one of the big statements issued by the investigation team says that concerns were not pursued due to miscommunication and misunderstanding rather than any individual or systemic failure. So essentially, like they're saying, miscommunication and misunderstanding played a role in the NHLPA's handling of this, and that really individually nobody failed Kyle Beach or the other victim, and that's kind of the summary here, which I don't understand at all. In my opinion, Donald Fehr and the doctor involved both failed Kyle Beach and the other victim big time. Essentially, here's a little bit more details and some summary. It took a while to go through. It's a 20-page article here, and with the full results, to read through it, kind of comb through it, and then, it took a while, which is why this is a few hours later getting YouTube, because it was really complicated. But essentially, here's kind of some of the highlights. It says, there were multiple instances where Donald Fehr said he could not recall receiving emails or calls, including a very important one from Ross Gurney. Of course, Gurney was the agent for Kyle Beach, who said he warned Donald Fehr that Brad Aldrich was a pedophile or a sexual predator. I believe there was some doubt over what term he used, but still saying, that he used that type of terminology. But Fehr claims, of course, that he doesn't recall those calls or emails, but he also said that if this indeed did happen and terms like that were used, he would remember, but somehow magically he does not. Now, apparently 3 months later, Joe Resnick, who is a representative for Black Ace 1, also followed up with Donald Fehr. He had made mention in his email that he knew that he had previous contact, from Ross Gurney, and then he wanted to follow up on his client here as well. Apparently they had a 14-minute phone call as well as this email. Apparently each were shown these records separately like you would normally do in an investigation to make sure you get what you would hope to be an honest reaction, and neither had any recollection or claim to have any recollection of that situation. That's a pretty important conversation. I don't get that. That to me, like, clearly they're not telling the truth. They can't be. Like, how can you not remember this? Fehr also recalls that Kyle Beach was referred to Dr. Shea, who of course is a psychologist with the NHLPA assistance program. Dr. Shea says that Beach declined to receive any counseling, didn't want to get any treatment or any help, but only wanted to make sure that USA Hockey, who Brad Aldrich was getting an opportunity to work for, would be made aware and be notified of what had happened here so that he could hopefully save other victims from, being impacted as well. But unfortunately, that never happened. He was told that he was assured that they would follow up and that this information would be passed along to USA Hockey. Never happened. How is that not failure? Not only did you fail the current victims, but you failed to protect future victims by not doing your job. Now, essentially, Dr. Shea says later that he basically assumed the NHLPA would follow up with USA Hockey. He just didn't think it should be him. I'm like, well, when you're made aware of this situation, would you not follow up to make sure somebody did? Even if you're not sure you should be the person directly responsible for making the initial contact? Like, come on. Like, take some ownership of this. It's so frustrating. Now, of course, Kyle Beach himself previously had called for Donald Fehr and Dr. Brian Shaw both to be fired by the NHLPA, claiming that, of course, other victims were harmed because of the fact that they did not handle the situation with him and Black Ace One appropriately, and information was not passed on to USA Hockey. And of course, at this point, nothing has been done. Now, part of this as well, which I find very interesting and a little bit odd, but still, I guess, time changes people sometimes. But Dr. Shea, obviously, he spoke to the Block and Jenner investigative team for the Blackhawks investigation. He also spoke to these people for the NHLPA investigation, and the information wasn't exactly the same. He had told Block and Jenner that he had no memory of meeting with Beach, but that's obviously changed now, and he tried to say that essentially, meeting with Beach was like an in-person meeting, but he does recall having a phone conversation. He said he assumed the NHLPA would follow up and pass the information along to USA Hockey. They're just not sure that it was his responsibility to do that. He also had a conversation with Black Ace One, who had called and spoke to Dr. Shea to basically corroborate Beach's story, to make sure that he would take it seriously, knowing that, like, it happened to me as well. Like, this is not, something that's, false. Like, it's, just trying to make sure that they get all the information and back them up to make sure something is done. And he said he felt that was unnecessary because he believed Kyle Beach. So this has to be classified, right, as a credible sexual assault report, but yet you do nothing about it, and yet nobody is responsible here? Like, this is complete BS. I just have a really hard time believing the facts in this investigation. I don't believe that Donald Fehr and the other people who said they don't recall things are telling the truth. You got to keep in mind, Donald Fehr, of course, is a very experienced, trained lawyer, so he would probably know what to say, so not to implicate himself, to make things any worse, or, to try to, I guess, make himself look innocent here. But essentially, I just don't understand how they could not do anything. Like, we already knew that Kyle Beach had been failed miserably by several people, and not only him, but the other victim, of course, who remains unnamed. So I know it kind of gets referred to as the Kyle Beach scenario a lot, because obviously he's the one that came forward and was publicly, decided to identify himself. But, look what happened here with not only these guys, but other victims. This guy continued to go on and sexually assault other people. And it could have been stopped if they would have properly passed the information along, warned people what this guy was like, and stopped him from getting more job opportunities, instead of what we saw like in the other report with people giving him good references. and allowing him to continue not only, that bad behavior, but continuing to hurt other victims. It's sickening. It's mind-blowing. I don't understand. I really hope that the NHL players, of course, who are represented by this, NHLPA, that they don't accept this report, and that major change in the NHLPA come from this. It's already been talked about that the future of Donald Fehr is questionable given his age as well. I mean, he's already approaching his mid-70s. They obviously ratified a new CBA recently, so by the time a new CBA needs to be negotiated, it's going to be, he's going to be late 70s. Like, it's, certainly there's a lot of questions about his future regardless, and then you throw this investigation on top of it, and it certainly questions things. I know it's already been asked, I know recently, like we talked about, where there was an agents meeting with the NHLPA, and they tried to ask him about his future, and he basically refused to talk about it. They want to know if there's like a succession plan, what comes next, because this is the type of job that Donald Fehr is head of the PA, that it's not like a term position or anything where it has like an expiry date, right? So not like all of a sudden he's just going to be like, okay, my time is up, I guess I'm done, I'm moving on. Like, they essentially have to either have him step down, or they have to go through their process, which they do have, in order to remove him from being in that position. And it requires the 32 representatives from each team to go basically into a private meeting. They have to discuss it, and they have to have so many votes. I don't know the exact rules and regulations around it, but it's, yes, it's complicated, it's messy, but many people feel that it would be challenging for them to come together to pull it off, given the fact that they all kind of have different thoughts and opinions on what should be done, and hard to get that many people to agree to the same thing. But for this reason alone, I would hope that 32 players could sit in a room and say this was handled extremely bad. Our union failed these guys miserably. Change needs to happen, and it should be that simple. But that's my thought. So let me know what you think of this report. I think it's really bad luck on their part for doing this as a late Friday news dump. Again, this scenario, as I mentioned before, when it comes to Kyle Beach, the Blackhawks, and the whole scenario, I knew this was not going to be the end of the line, and I still don't think this is the end of the line. We're not done talking about this. The story is still unfolding, and let's just hope that we can get some change in place so that we don't have future victims, and that people can be protected and safe, and parents, when they see their kids being drafted, not only by the Blackhawks, but by any NHL organization when they're 18, 19 years old, and they're trying to make a break into the NHL, that they don't have to worry about these types of things taking place, that they can actually be, responsible people, making sure these things don't happen, and players having each other's back, and the right people in executive and power positions, to not using their position of power as a way to abuse people. It should be to help people. I mean, that's just, the way things should be, but hopefully we'll get there someday. But these people failed again miserably. I hope we see change. Let me know what you think on this report down in the comments, and we can discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest rumblings around the entire NHL. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.